"You picked the wrong town to drive a car like this, boy." The officer leaned into the window with both hands on the door frame. His partner stood behind the car with one hand resting on his belt and the other holding a flashlight pointed at the back seat. The man behind the wheel sat very still, with both of his hands placed flat on the top of the steering wheel. He wore a plain gray t-shirt and a simple black watch on his left wrist. His name was Danny Boyega, and he had been driving the speed limit for the last 45 minutes straight. The road was empty and dark, somewhere between the small town of Ridley and the county line just past the old gas station. There were no other cars around, no witnesses on the sidewalk, and no street lights for at least half a mile in both directions. License and registration. The officer did not say please, and he did not step back from the window to give the man space. He just stood there, close enough that Danny could smell the coffee on his breath and see the name tag on his chest. The name tag said Deputy Brian Keller. Danny moved slowly. He reached toward the glove box with his right hand and kept his left hand on the wheel where the officer could see it. He pulled out a small folder and handed it through the window without saying a word. Deputy Keller took the folder and flipped it open. He looked at the license, then looked at Danny, then looked at the license again. He turned his head toward his partner and held up the card. "Says here he lives in Washington, D.C." Deputy Keller's voice was loud enough for his partner to hear. His partner walked closer and looked at the card over Keller's shoulder. The partner's name tag said Deputy Ray Sims. He was younger than Keller, maybe 25 or 26 years old. He had a crew cut and a thick neck, and he stood with his chest pushed out like he was trying to look bigger. Long way from home. Sims looked at the car, a black sedan, new, clean, with no scratches and no bumper stickers and no air fresheners hanging from the mirror. "What brings you all the way out here to our little town?" Danny kept both hands on the steering wheel. "I am passing through on my way to a meeting in the morning." "A meeting?" Keller repeated the word like it was a joke. He looked at Sims, and they shared a look that said they did not believe him. "What kind of meeting needs you driving through Ridley County at 11:30 at night?" "A work meeting." Danny did not change the tone of his voice, and he did not look away from the windshield in front of him. Keller tapped the license against his palm a few times, then leaned back into the window even closer than before. "Step out of the vehicle." Danny did not move right away. "Can I ask why I was pulled over in the first place, Deputy?" Keller's face changed. His jaw got tight and his eyes got narrow, and he put one finger up close to Danny's face. "I said step out of the vehicle. You don't get to ask me questions. I ask the questions out here. You understand me?" Danny took a slow breath. He opened the door and stepped out onto the road with his hands open at his sides. He was tall, about 6'3", with broad shoulders and a calm face that showed nothing. Keller had to look up at him now. "Turn around and put your hands on the car." Keller grabbed Danny by the shoulder and pushed him toward the hood of the sedan. Danny turned and placed his hands flat on the warm metal without being told twice. Sims walked around to the other side of the car and opened the passenger door without asking. He started going through the glove box and the center console, pulling out papers and tossing them onto the seat. "You got anything in this car I should know about?" Keller patted Danny down from his shoulders to his ankles. He checked both pockets and pulled out a cell phone and a set of keys and a thin black wallet. "No, sir." Danny kept his hands on the hood, and his voice flat and even. Keller set the phone and wallet on the roof of the car. He opened the wallet and looked through it. There was some cash, a debit card, and a second card in a small slot behind the first one. Keller pulled the second card out and held it up to the flashlight but did not read it carefully. He put it back and tossed the wallet next to the phone. "Nothing in here but some papers and a laptop bag." Sims called out from inside the car. He was now reaching under the seats and feeling around the floor mats with both hands. "Check the trunk." Keller said it without even turning around. He kept his eyes on Danny, like he was waiting for a reaction. Danny did not give him one. "You do not have the right to search my trunk without my permission or a warrant." Danny said it slowly, clearly, and with no anger in his voice. He said it the way a person reads out loud from a book. Keller smiled. It was not a nice smile. He stepped very close to Danny and spoke in a low voice. "Out here, I am the warrant. You understand that. There is no one watching. There is no one coming to help you. So I suggest you stop acting like you know more than me, and just let us do our job." Danny turned his head slightly, just enough to look Keller in the eyes. "I would like to make a phone call." "You're not under arrest. You don't get a phone call." Keller picked up the phone from the roof of the car and held it up. "What's on this phone that's so important? You in a hurry to call somebody?" "That phone is my personal property." Danny kept his voice the same, level and steady like a man reading the weather on the radio. Keller turned the phone over in his hand and pressed the power button. The screen lit up with a lock screen that showed the time and a small icon in the top corner. Keller looked at the icon but did not seem to know what it meant. "Unlock it." Keller held the phone in front of Danny's face. "No." Danny said the word and nothing else. Keller's face turned red. He put the phone in his own pocket and then grabbed Danny by the arm and pulled him away from the car. "That's it. You're coming with us. Failure to cooperate with a lawful traffic stop. You have not told me why you pulled me over." Danny said it again, the same way, like he was reading from a script. "Broken tail light." Keller pointed at the back of the car. Danny looked at the tail lights. Both of them were working just fine, glowing red and bright in the dark. Sims came around from the other side of the car and looked at the tail lights too. He paused for a second, then looked at Keller. "Both lights look fine to me, Brian." Keller shot Sims a hard look that made the younger deputy shut his mouth and step back. "It was flickering earlier. I saw it flicker. That's enough for a stop." Danny did not argue. He just stood there, still and quiet, with his hands open at his sides and his face calm as glass. Keller took out his handcuffs and opened them with a loud click. "Put your hands behind your back." "On what charge?" Danny asked. "I'll figure that out on the way to the station." Keller grabbed Danny's left wrist and pulled it behind his back and locked one cuff around it. Then he did the same with the right wrist. The metal clicked shut twice. Sims opened the back door of the patrol car, and Keller pushed Danny inside with one hand on the back of his head. Danny ducked and sat down on the hard plastic seat. The door slammed shut beside him. Inside the patrol car, there was a camera mounted on the dashboard, pointed at the road. There was also a small camera above the rearview mirror, pointed at the back seat. A small red light blinked on the second camera, meaning it was recording. Keller got into the driver's seat. Sims sat in the passenger side. Keller picked up his radio and called dispatch. "This is Unit 14, bringing in one male for a traffic stop on Route 9, mile marker 32. No weapons found. Will process at the station." The radio crackled and a woman's voice said, "Copy, Unit 14. They drove for about 15 minutes. Nobody spoke during the ride." Danny sat in the back seat with his hands cuffed behind him and looked straight ahead. Keller drove with one hand and kept looking at Danny in the rearview mirror. Sims stared out the passenger window and did not say a word. The station was a small brick building on the main road of Ridley. It had a parking lot with 4 spaces, a flag out front, and a sign that said Ridley County Sheriff's Department in white letters. The paint was old and the lights above the door were yellow and dim. Keller pulled into the lot and parked near the front door. He got out, opened the back door, and pulled Danny out by the arm. They walked inside through a heavy glass door that buzzed when Keller pushed a button on the wall. The inside of the station was small. There was a front desk with a woman sitting behind it typing on a computer. There were 2 holding rooms with glass windows on the left side. On the right side was a hallway that led to a break room and a storage closet and the sheriff's office at the end. Keller walked Danny past the front desk. The woman behind it looked up and watched but did not say anything. Keller opened the first holding room and put Danny inside. The room had a metal chair, a metal table, and one camera up in the corner of the ceiling. "Sit down." Keller pointed at the chair. Danny sat. Keller took the phone, the wallet, and the keys out of his pocket and dropped them on the table. Then he stood across from Danny with his arms crossed. "Now, you're going to tell me who you are, what you're really doing in my county, and you're going to unlock this phone." Danny looked at the phone on the table, then looked up at Keller. "My name is Danny Boyega. I told you what I am doing here, and I am not going to unlock that phone." Keller slammed his hand down on the table. The sound was sharp and loud in the small room. "You think you can just roll through here in a $50,000 car with DC plates and not answer to anybody? You think I'm stupid?" Danny said nothing. He just looked at Keller with the same face he had worn all night, calm and still, like a man who had been in this room before. Sims stood near the door with his arms at his sides. He watched the whole thing and shifted his weight from one foot to the other like he was not comfortable. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, but Keller spoke first. "I'm going to hold you here until the morning. Then the sheriff can decide what to do with you. Maybe we'll get a warrant for that phone. Or maybe you'll come to your senses and just open it yourself." Keller picked up the phone and turned it over in his hand again. Keller walked out of the room and shut the door. The lock turned with a heavy sound. Danny sat in the metal chair with his hands still cuffed behind his back and looked up at the camera in the corner. The red light blinked. He stared at it for a long time. On the other side of the glass, Sims caught up with Keller in the hallway. "Brian, what are we charging this guy with?" Both tail lights were working. "Keep your voice down." Keller looked back toward the front desk. "I'll write it up as a busted light and resistance during a stop. It's not the first time. You know how this works." Sims rubbed the back of his neck. "This feels different. This guy, he didn't fight back. He didn't yell. He didn't do anything wrong." Keller stopped walking and turned around. He pointed a finger at Sims's chest. "He did not cooperate. That's enough. Don't go soft on me now, Ray. Not after everything I've taught you this past year. You want to be a real deputy, or do you want to be a hall monitor?" Sims said nothing. He just nodded once, slow and small, and walked back to the front desk. The hours passed slowly inside the station. Danny sat in the holding room and did not sleep. He did not ask for water. He did not bang on the door or yell for help. He just sat still, cuffed and quiet, looking at the camera in the corner like it was the only thing in the room that mattered. At 6:15 in the morning, the sun came through the small window of the holding room and hit the table where the phone still sat. Danny had not moved from the chair all night. His eyes were open and his back was straight, and his face was the same as it had been for the last 7 hours. The door opened, and a man in a brown uniform walked in. He was older than Keller, maybe 55, with gray hair cut short and deep lines around his eyes. His badge said Sheriff Dale Womack. He held a paper cup of coffee in one hand and a folder in the other. Womack sat down across from Danny and placed the folder on the table. He looked at Danny for a long time before he spoke. "My deputy says you were driving through town last night with a broken tail light and refused to cooperate during the stop." Danny looked at Womack the same way he had looked at Keller, steady and straight, with no anger and no fear. "Both of my tail lights work. Your deputy never told me why I was pulled over until after he had already searched my car and put me in handcuffs." Womack opened the folder and read through the papers inside. He flipped one page, then another, then closed the folder and set it aside. He picked up the phone from the table and turned it over in his hand. "Deputy Keller says you would not unlock this phone when he asked you to." Womack set the phone back down and looked at Danny. "That is correct. I am not required to unlock my phone during a traffic stop, and your deputy had no warrant to take it from me." Danny said every word at the same speed, like a clock ticking in a quiet room. Womack leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "Son, I've been the sheriff of this county for 22 years. I've seen a lot of people come through this room. Most of them are scared or angry or both. But you are just sitting there like you own the building. So I'm going to ask you one time, who are you?" Danny looked at the phone on the table, then looked at Womack. "Uncuff me and I will show you." Womack stared at him for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small key. He stood up, walked behind Danny, and unlocked both handcuffs. They fell onto the chair with a soft clang. Danny brought his hands forward and rubbed his wrists slowly, one at a time. Danny picked up his wallet from the table and opened it. He pulled out the second card, the one Keller had looked at but not read. He placed it flat on the table and slid it across to the sheriff. Womack picked up the card and read it. Then he read it again. His face changed. The color went out of his cheeks and his mouth opened, but no words came out for a few seconds. He put the card down on the table very carefully, like it was made of glass. The card was a credential badge from the United States Department of Justice. It had a seal on the left and a photo on the right. Under the photo, in small black letters, it said, "Danny Boyega, Senior Investigator, Civil Rights Division. You're a federal investigator." Womack said the words slowly, almost in a whisper, like saying them out loud made the whole thing real. "I am." Danny picked up the card and put it back in his wallet. "And I was not just passing through Ridley County on my way to a meeting." Womack sat back down very slowly, like his legs were not working the way they should. "Then why are you here?" Danny picked up his phone from the table and pressed the power button. The screen lit up, and the small icon in the top corner blinked. He turned the phone around so Womack could see the screen. "This phone has been recording audio since the moment your deputy walked up to my window last night. Every word he said, every threat he made, every order he gave without cause." Womack looked at the screen. His eyes moved over the recording app, which showed a file that was 7 hours, 42 minutes, and 16 seconds long. "That's why you wouldn't unlock it." "That is correct. If your deputy had opened this phone, he would have seen the recording, and he would have deleted it." Danny set the phone face down on the table, but that is not all. Danny pointed up at the camera in the corner of the holding room. "That camera has been running all night. It recorded Deputy Keller slamming his hand on this table and threatening me. It also recorded him telling Deputy Sims to falsify a report about my tail light." Womack turned around and looked up at the camera. The red light was still blinking. "But more than that, Sheriff, there is a camera in the back of your patrol car. It recorded the entire ride from the traffic stop to this station. It also recorded the moment your deputy put a phone that did not belong to him into his own pocket." Danny folded his hands on the table. "All of that footage belongs to your department, and a copy of it was sent to my office in Washington at 6 o'clock this morning." Womack put both hands flat on the table and lowered his head. He breathed out long and slow through his nose like a man who just learned his house was on fire. "How long has this investigation been going on?" 7 months. Danny opened the folder that Womack had brought in and turned it around so the sheriff could see the top page. "Your department has had 14 complaints in the last 2 years. All of them were traffic stops. All of them involved Black or Latino drivers. 12 of the 14 were filed against the same deputy." Womack closed his eyes. "Keller. Deputy Keller has been pulling over drivers of color on Route 9 for at least 18 months. He searches their cars without permission or probable cause. He takes their phones and looks through them. He threatens them and holds them overnight without charges. And then he writes a report that says the driver had a broken tail light, or was swerving or smelled like alcohol." Danny tapped the folder once. None of it was true. Not one single time. Womack stood up from the chair and walked to the window. He put one hand on the wall and looked out at the parking lot. His patrol car was there, and Keller's patrol car was next to it, and the flag out front moved slowly in the early morning wind. The people he stopped, they tried to file complaints. Danny kept talking, his voice the same as it had been all night, flat and calm and clear. But every complaint went to the same place. This office, your desk, and not one of them led to any action, not a review, not a suspension, not even a written warning. Womack did not turn around. "I trusted him. He told me they were all routine stops." "You did not check." Danny stood up from the chair for the first time in 7 hours. "That is why I am not just here for Deputy Keller. I am here for the department." The door to the holding room opened, and Sims stood in the hallway with wide eyes and a white face. He had been listening. "Sheriff, I didn't know about the complaints. I just started here last year. He told me that's how things worked." Danny looked at Sims for a long time, then nodded slowly. I know, I have read your file. You were not named in any of the complaints. What you saw last night, you chose to stay quiet. You saw two working tail lights and you said nothing when your partner put me in handcuffs. Sims looked at the floor. His hands were shaking at his sides. I should have said something. I knew it was wrong. You did know. Danny picked up his phone and his wallet and his keys from the table. And when the time comes, you will have a chance to say that under oath. The front door of the station buzzed, and 3 people walked in. 2 of them wore dark suits and carried briefcases. The third wore a blue jacket with yellow letters on the back that said FBI. The woman behind the front desk stood up from her chair and stepped back without a word. One of the people in suits walked to the holding room and stood next to Danny. We're ready whenever you are. Danny nodded. He looked at Womack one more time. Sheriff, my office is going to take custody of all footage from your patrol car cameras and your station cameras going back 2 years. We have a federal warrant for those records, and it was signed by a judge this morning at 5:45. The person in the suit held up a folded document and placed it on the table. Womack picked it up and read it slowly. His hand was steady, but his face was gray and tired like a man who had not slept in days even though the night had just ended. Where is Deputy Keller right now? Danny asked. He went home at 3 in the morning. Sims answered from the hallway. He lives on Oak Street, about 10 minutes from here. Danny looked at the FBI agent and nodded. The agent spoke into a radio clipped. To his shoulder, Unit 2 proceed to the residence, Oak Street, Ridley, less than 20 minutes later. The front door of the station buzzed again. This time it was Deputy Brian Keller who walked in, but he was not walking by choice. 2 FBI agents had him by both arms, and his hands were behind his back in the same silver handcuffs he had used on Danny just hours before. Keller's face was red, and his eyes were wide, and he was talking fast. This is not right. I am a sworn deputy. You can't do this. Dale, tell them this is a mistake. Womack stood near the front desk with his arms at his sides. He did not move and he did not speak. He just looked at Keller, and then looked away, like a man watching something he had been afraid of. For a long time finally happened. Danny stood by the door and watched them. Bring Keller inside. He said nothing. He did not smile. He did not gloat. He just watched with the same calm face he had worn all night while a man who had abused his badge for almost 2 years was walked past him in chains. Keller saw Danny standing there and he stopped moving. The FBI agents held him in place. Keller stared at Danny, and for the first time, his face changed from anger to something else. It was the look of a man who suddenly understood that the person he had pushed around all night had never been afraid of him, not even for 1 second. You were recording the whole time. Keller said it quietly, almost to himself. You wanted me to pull you over. Danny looked at Keller and said nothing. He did not need to. The answer was standing in the room, wearing a gray t-shirt and a simple black watch, holding a phone with 7 hours of evidence in his pocket. The FBI agents moved Keller down the hall toward the second holding room. The same kind of room with a metal chair and a metal table and a camera in the corner. The door shut and the lock turned, and Keller was on the other side of the glass for the first time in his career. Danny walked outside into the morning light. The air was cool, and the sky was turning orange and pink over the trees along the main road. He stood next to his black sedan, the one with the DC plates and the 2 working tail lights, and took a long breath. One of the people in suits came outside and stood next to him. We got everything: audio, video, the patrol car footage, and the holding room camera. Combined with the other 13 complaints, this case is solid. Danny nodded slowly. Make sure the footage from last night is backed up to 3 separate locations before noon. And I want a full copy of every report Keller has filed in the last 24 months on my desk by Friday. Done. The person in the suit walked back inside. Danny opened the door of his car and sat down in the driver's seat. He placed his hands on the steering wheel, the same way he had the night before. He looked at himself in the rearview mirror for a moment, just a second, and then he started the engine. Before he pulled out of the lot, he saw Sims standing by the front door of the station. The young deputy stood there with his hands in his pockets and his head down, watching Danny through the glass. Danny looked at him for a moment, then gave a single small nod. Sims nodded back. It was the kind of nod that meant something without any words attached to it. Danny drove out of the parking lot and turned right onto Route 9, the same road where he had been pulled over 12 hours earlier. The morning sun came through the windshield, and the road stretched out ahead of him, empty and long and open. His phone buzzed once on the seat beside him. He glanced at the screen. It was a message from his office in Washington. It said 2 words, "Case filed." Danny put his eyes back on the road and drove. The speed limit was 55, and he drove exactly 55, the same way he had driven the night before, steady and straight and with both hands on the wheel. Because Danny Boyega did not need to speed. He did not need to yell. He did not need to fight. He just needed the truth, a working camera, and enough patience to let a guilty man destroy himself with his own words. The town of Ridley got smaller in his rearview mirror, and then it was gone. But the case that started on that dark stretch of road was just beginning. 14 families who had been stopped and searched and held and ignored were about to get the one thing no one in that county had ever given them: a chance to be heard.